Hey Jay, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. So the last two games, team goes scoreless. Just curious what you take away from, the group offensively, of course, taking into consideration, the lineup and everything like that. But just what are your thoughts on the team's performance offensively?
Yeah, well, obviously there's room for improvement. When you didn't score a goal while on the road, there's room for improvement. I thought, it wasn't for lack of chances. We did have some chances in both games. And, we lacked some finishers in the lineup, like you mentioned. But I think there are some tactics and some things that we're focusing on to draw a little bit more offense out of the whole group. As I said last night after the game, I thought there were some positives. I thought we competed very hard in a tough building. And, once we got our sea legs under us, it was the game was in question there for a little bit. And I felt the team that would score the first goal would certainly set themselves up. Unfortunately, that wasn't us, but we competed very hard right to the end of the game. And I thought we took some lessons into our practice today, had a really good practice, and we're going to have a really good game tomorrow night.
I'm just curious, the way you structure your training camp, you kind of answered it already perhaps, but I know during the regular season you probably, structure your practice the day after a game based on what happened in the game. Are you doing the same thing in the preseason in terms of, do you already know what you're going to do today no matter what happens in last night's game, or are you doing what you're doing today based on last night's game?
Oh, that's a good question. You're asking me if I script every day of training camp beforehand. Typically, I would script the first 3 days of training camp because there's no game played the night before where we can adjust some things here or there. I do have an idea of things that I would like our team to accomplish over the 2.5 week training camp. But I think you have to stay flexible and adjust things based on what you're seeing in some of the preseason games as well. And so today we accomplished some things that I had in my mind of things I wanted to get accomplished before camp started, but I think they're also apropos to what we've been seeing in some of the preseason games as well.
Jay, sort of along those lines a little bit, the last couple of days, looks like one group is guys that'll be on the team likely, and then other guys, depth guys, guys on the farm. Is that you just trying to get a head start time management-wise, or how are you trying to mix guys that are competing for spots, whereas you want your guys to be ready to go by October 12th?
Yeah, I think that's a balance, right? It's a balance because I thought we've gotten some really good performances out of individuals who are what you might consider depth pieces, but that are staking a claim here to try and earn a full-time spot. In the end, you can't practice with 35 or 40 people on the ice at the same time and get something meaningful accomplished. So, we decided to get down to 5 lines with one group, 10D with one group, 2 goalies with one group, and that means that there is another group. But we've let those players know that doesn't mean anything. That's just a starting point for practice. What's most important is how people show during games. And we've had some people rise to the occasion. We have some others that need to rise to the occasion, especially as camp narrows here. We're a week in, we're 3 preseason games in, and the runway is getting shorter by the day. So every day counts, and the competition is really heating up here.
Hi, Jay. I have some questions about defensemen today. And I wonder about Philip Broberg, just in the sense that he was, I would say, probably drafted as an offensive guy, and that's maybe where he got his chops in Sweden. Mm-hmm. Do you need to put him into certain maybe offensive opportunities to kind of, even though you want him to kind of round out his game, but just to give him maybe a little confidence? Is that something that maybe you factor in as a coach?
Well, the good thing about Philip Broberg is I've gotten to know him right from his very first day in the organization. So I've had him and I were talking about it. I remember his first rookie game last year, and where he was at that point. Got to play him. I think he was the leading, time on ice leader for rookie defenseman in the American Hockey League under our watch. He played in every situation. Certainly was a really important piece of the Bakersfield Condors. I think he came up to the NHL on earned recalls and felt more and more comfortable as time went on. I think in this camp, what we've tried to do is pair him with a partner who complements him. I thought he showed well in the one game that he did play. And he was in those offensive situations. He played a little bit on the power play. I have a belief that for young defensemen coming into the National Hockey League, the most important thing on their checklist has to be the ability to defend and feel comfortable defending the world's best forwards. And once they gain experience and a level of comfort, then I think the other parts of their game emerge because the coaching staff gains a level of trust with that player. I feel quite comfortable when Philip Broberg's on the ice. I think he showed really well in the American League, and I think he showed really well down the stretch. And at a critical point of our season last year, when our so-called playoff lives were on the line, he played in a game in Los Angeles. And he didn't play a lot, but he still played, and that's high-pressure situation. So I'm quite comfortable with where Philip's at. I think he's had a good camp. And he's in that battle, and he's battling hard.
So in terms of learning the defense first or mastering that first, is it almost a case of like learning how to walk before you can run? Is that kind of...
No, I think it's more where you're putting your import, right? And for me, making sure that those things get tidied up first. Those things you have a level of confidence in, a level of consistency in, and then the offensive side takes care of itself. We spent all camp talking about how we want to improve as a checking team. Well, for us, I've said this in this room before, checking begins in the offensive zone. So the better we are in that zone, the less time you spend in the neutral zone, the less time you spend in your own end, I think sets us up for success. And for Philip, I know, having seen it at both levels, that he is the type of defenseman that will make our team better for a long, long time.
I would assume Ryan Murray's probably the defenseman here that you knew the least coming into camp. What have you maybe learned about him so far?
Well, DMB, I'm going to share something with you. I actually got to coach Ryan at the World Cup of Hockey in 2016. He was on that team, the under-23 team. So I did have a relationship with him beforehand. I think, he was a late signing for us. He came to Edmonton because he has a belief in our organization. He's a Stanley Cup champion, so he knows what it takes for teams to have success at crunch time. I think he's a real good ad for us. Good level of experience. He's in the sweet spot of his career, and he's going to make us deeper on that back end for sure.
His partner, Dimitri Samorukov, what's the difference with him playing left and right, and how do you kind of value him on?
Yeah, well, I think the mindset behind that was not dissimilar to what we were trying to do all throughout our decor here, which is to try and pair a veteran player with a younger player to make them feel comfortable right off the bat. Dimitri played left last night, so he played with Phil Kemp last night. So he feels comfortable going either side. But what we wanted to do for him right off the bat was pair him with a veteran with good experience, not dissimilar to Niemelainen and Demers, Broberg and Barry, even Kulak and Bouchard. That type of thing. We just want them feeling good and comfortable, not putting too much on the plate of two youngsters together.
Jay, just wanted to ask you about some of the veteran players, starting with Leon and Connor, but there's others. Do you have an idea like, well, I want them to play 3 games, let's say, and they say, you know, I'm good with 4 or 2, or how does that work with guys who probably know better than anyone else what they need to get ready for?
Yeah, you're right. They know better than they know their bodies and what they need to be ready. So I think it starts with me asking questions and creating a dialogue with the players. You know, some people want a little bit more. Some people might only need a few. So it's about talking through that. And it's also balancing their wants with the needs of the team as well, and where the team's at and what the team needs. You know, I think that comes from experience in just talking to your players. And we have a lot of people that I know have not played yet in the preseason. They put a lot of work in practice. I think they're probably sick of practicing and ready to get going. And that's a good thing too, when you really have a desire to play in preseason. So I think that stuff will play itself out over the last 5 here.
To follow up on Gene's question, do you anticipate a fair amount of cuts after the weekend is through so that you can?
Yeah, I think you almost look at training camp in 3 stages, right? Like we had the first 3 days of practice, then the first 2 games, and then there was an off day. And then you go through the next phase, which will probably take us till Sunday. And then that last week is when you're starting to really narrow. There might be some people here or there get announced over the next couple of days. But yeah, that's how we look at it. We look at it in 3 different phases. The first kind of 5 or 6, then you get to the Sunday, and then you have that last week with 3 games in it.